Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: China and Russia blocked a United Nations push over the Strait of Hormuz, a Security Council resolution aimed at protecting shipping through the key waterway. Mysterious drones near U.S. military bases raising major national security concerns. What are they targeting? And who's behind the unauthorized drones? An expert weighs in.
Even though this is a significant war with Iran and it will change history, don't be distracted by the war of the month. The bigger war is this unrestricted war with the Chinese Communist Party.
A showdown in Congress over defense spending, a major fight as President Trump pushes a 40% increase to counter U.S. adversaries, including China. In the Middle East, Israel presses on with Operation Roaring Lion against what remains of the Iranian regime. Iran continues to launch attacks on countries across the region. And the Strait of Hormuz, still blocked by Iran. The United Nations on Tuesday failed to pass a resolution urging nations to secure the Strait of Hormuz. China and Russia vetoed the Security Council draft.
As a 2019 UN Secretary General report affirmed, it has hidden and encouraged its proxies to hide behind civilians and civilian infrastructure to attack Americans and our allies. The Secretary General himself affirmed Iran hides military hardware in hospitals and schools and civilian neighborhoods for propaganda purposes in the most sick and despicable way.
The majority of the UN Security Council voted in favor, but with vetoes from China and Russia, the resolution still failed to pass. Pakistan and Colombia abstained. The resolution encourages nations to coordinate defensive efforts to ensure the safety of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. This includes the potential use of escorts for merchant vessels and other actions to deter obstruction of the waterway. Bahrain currently holds the Council's rotating presidency. The kingdom's civilian infrastructure and energy sites have been under attack from Iran since the start of the war. Bahrain is a U.S. partner in the Gulf region that depends on the strait to export its oil and gas.
Reaching agreement in the UN Security Council is difficult because its 5 permanent members, the U.S., the U.K., France, China, and Russia, have veto power. And they all represent different ideologies. On top of that, a single veto can block a resolution. Surveillance from Beijing is raising national security concerns at U.S. military bases. Recent reports say Chinese-made camera systems were once embedded across U.S. infrastructure, including military bases. Now, after years of bans, a new threat may be emerging in the skies: unauthorized drones flying over U.S. military bases. Brett Velikovich, an American drone expert and former U.S. Army intelligence and special operations soldier, told Fox News, quote, "What concerns me most is the behavior of these drones. They are not hobbyist drones. Reports indicate they entered and exited base perimeters in ways designed to avoid detection, as if testing response protocols." He also pointed to the risk, saying a drone swarm that costs less than a pickup truck can shut down a strategic airbase.
For years, Chinese companies like Hikvision and Dahua supplied surveillance cameras across the U.S. They were often advertised and sold as security tools, but officials warned those systems had serious vulnerabilities. Some were even described as backdoors capable of exposing sensitive data. After the U.S. restricted their use, especially on military ground, the problem didn't end there. In recent years, unauthorized drone activity around U.S. military bases have been steadily increasing. And incidents last month at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana and Fort McNair in D.C. have resulted in high-level security responses. Experts say the timing is notable. The rise in drone incursions follow the crackdown on Chinese surveillance cameras. Modern drones are inexpensive, widely accessible, and able to carry out sophisticated surveillance missions. In some cases, officials report multiple drones operating together in coordinated swarms, creating major challenges. They are difficult to track, harder to stop, and can slip past general defense systems. National security analysts warn the trend could signal Chinese surveillance or expose serious gaps in U.S. defenses. As drone technology advances, officials say the U.S. needs stronger rules and faster defenses before the threat grows.
And with multiple reports of sophisticated drones spotted around sensitive military installations around the country, who's behind them? Joining us now to unpack the recent drone sightings around U.S. military bases is Casey Fleming, CEO of Black Ops Partners and author of The Red Tsunami. Casey Fleming, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show. Now, there's growing reports of unauthorized drones, pretty sophisticated ones that have been flying near or around U.S. military bases. First, what's your reaction and your read on who's behind these?
There's no question that the Chinese Communist Party are behind these. It's part of their whole shtick to be able to do that. And then secondly, we've clamped down on the cameras, the DJI cameras, as well as some of the drones as well. But that just forces the enemy, and they are the enemy, to go even further on their espionage.
And on that note, because we have gone after, some of the aspects, especially the cameras, what do you see as the solutions here? Because it looks like if we go after one, then they use another. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. What do you see as the next steps that states or perhaps even the federal government can take?
Well, we should look into jamming the drones. They are a weapon of war. They're part of this unrestricted war against the United States and our allies. We need to look at jamming them as well as potentially shooting them down, like with shotguns and those kind of things, with local armaments. But if they're on Air Force bases or coming into Air Force bases, Navy bases, and so on, we should try jamming and shooting them down.
On that note, there is this op-ed by Brett Velikovich in Fox saying, what concerns me most is the behavior of these drones. They are not hobbyist drones. Reports indicate they entered and exited base perimeters in ways designed to avoid detection, as if testing response protocols. Now, some are saying this brings to mind, the spy balloon, or as China says, the weather balloon that floated across the United States. And of course, it took a while to shoot that down. What is China testing here, if it is China behind it?
Well, they're testing the ingress and egress of those drones into these Navy and Air Force bases. But they're also testing response, and they're also mapping everything that's on those bases. And the larger the drones, the more that they're testing air, testing all types of things. So this is a national security issue, an extreme national security issue. And we need to find out actually who's actually controlling these drones and track them back and put those folks in jail. This is a serious national security concern.
Expanding on that, you've often talked about unrestricted warfare, right? China's version of everything but the kinetic element. How is that at play here? Often you hear the term dual civil use or civil military fusion, where of course people think drones are like, hobbyists, right? You can use it for your vlogs or whatever, but there is also that military component to it. Talk to us about that.
Well, every bit of technology that goes into China, whether we give it to them in a partnership or whether they steal it, that intellectual property goes into what's called a military civil fusion center. And they have several of them in China. And the first thing is they split out, what can we use this from a military perspective? How can we weaponize this either through military or through civilian commercial measures to weaponize this against the West and primarily the United States? So these drones, they're not here for hobby. They're not here for fun. And let me take you one step further. They're manufacturing 10,000 of these Shahed type of Iranian drones every single day. 10 days, that's 100,000. In a month, that's 1 million of these very, very cheap drones that we need to adapt to very, very quickly, because we're using $3 million missiles to shoot down these drones, and we can't afford to keep doing that piece of it. Plus, the technology is it's an overwhelming use of technology against an underwhelming drone. And by the way, there are other different drones as well. There are small little missile drones that loiter over the target until they find something to shoot down, something that's lower speed than an Air Force fighter jet, but other drones and so on. So your enemy's at war with the United States. They are at war with you, the individual. This is not just the military, even though we're talking about military bases. It's your national security. And remember, unrestricted warfare is against every man, woman, and child.
Speaking of the changing nature and landscape, if you will, of warfare, of course, right now the big focus is the Iran war, and China's been helping Iran in various aspects. With what we just covered here, what are the concerns you're watching for in terms of how these could become attacks in the homeland? What should people be watching out for?
We need to expect attacks in the homeland because, you've got this war of escalation. And remember, don't be, even though this is a significant war with Iran and it will change history, don't be distracted by the war of the month. The bigger war is this unrestricted war with the Chinese Communist Party. That's the bigger war that's going on. We've seen increases in the unrestricted piece, cyber, drug, not yet biological. That still can be happening. But as this tension keeps getting ratcheted up, you can look at unrestricted war coming back on the American people from the partners, which is China and Russia. Russia more from an intelligence, satellite, and cyber perspective. China from the same satellite, drug with fentanyl and cyber as well. So Iran is a strategic partner of the Chinese Communist Party and Russia.
I want to dig into that because you actually have a great book on this. I see it behind you, but I have my copy right here, The Red Tsunami. And I think you do a fantastic job of connecting the dots, laying out all these different things that people might be wondering about, but maybe don't see the bigger picture. And you really lay it out here and connect everything for the viewer and the reader. But I think most importantly, at the very end, you have a whole section of what people can do. So talk to us a little bit about that last part. Give people some hope, what's something they can do right now to, secure their own security and the nation more broadly.
Well, exactly. The issue is your government got you to this point with failed policies supporting Iran and China, communist China, and so on. So if you're looking for the government to bail you out of where you're at right now, which is unrestricted warfare on every man, woman, and child, nobody's going to save your own bacon but yourself. So the answer is yes, there are things that you can do. Number one, make sure the book, and I'm not selling books, I'm trying to get intelligence out in everybody's hands and get the book in front of family, friends, everybody you know. And then secondly, stop purchasing Chinese goods and services. All you're doing is funding your enemy who is committed to destroying you, and they're doing a very good job of it on a daily basis. So stop funding your enemy. There's many other things you can do. They're in the back of the book.
I think ultimately it's quite empowering because otherwise it can feel quite devastating. But Casey Fleming, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
An American fighter jet has been shot down over Iran, and in the U.S. Congress, lawmakers are gearing up for a defense budget battle. President Trump is asking Congress for a major jump in defense spending next year, a whopping 40% increase from this year. If approved, it would be the largest military budget request in modern history. China is high on the list of U.S. adversaries. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
On Friday, the White House sending Congress its official budget request for the next fiscal year. In it, the largest increase for defense spending in decades, $440 billion more for defense spending, totaling $1.5 trillion. The administration says it's needed to address growing concerns from China, Russia, and other adversaries. A key focus of the Pentagon budget is rebuilding weapons stockpiles and strengthening domestic manufacturing capacity.
Over the last 30 years, our defense industrial base consolidated and atrophied. China's shipbuilding capacity dwarfs ours. They are outproducing us on ships, drones, and munitions, and they have embedded themselves deep into our defense supply chains. The consequences are clear.
A top agenda item is roughly $66 billion to bolster shipbuilding and shipyard capacity. The plan would also continue funding for the Golden Dome, a national missile defense system. While Democrats were quick to reject the budget, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham quickly responded, saying the defense budget is more than justified by the threats the U.S. faces throughout the world. The increase for defense spending is coupled with cuts to domestic areas, including a 50% slash to the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA.
During my campaign, I promised to cut 10 old regulations for every new regulation. And we've exceeded that
The president's budget sheds more than $15 billion from Biden-era green energy programs. Other cuts target the National Institutes of Health, Departments of Labor, Education, and Housing, seeking to eliminate around $10 billion for programs that it states have supported woke and leftist organizations. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats will fight tooth and nail to make sure the budget doesn't become law. With expected Democrat opposition, Republicans could try to fund some of the president's defense requests in a special budget bill, bypassing Democrats. Republicans are currently working on such an approach to fund immigration enforcement agencies.
A narrow bill that would fund ICE and CBP well into the future, so that this isn't something that, while President Trump is in office, we have to deal with again.
President Trump wants ICE and CBP funding by June 1st. As for the overall 2027 budget, the proposal now moves to Congress, where sharp debate will unfold in the coming months. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Coming up, a Chinese national in the U.S. illegally has been sentenced to 30 months in prison. He used stolen identities to obtain loans for luxury cars. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Trump-Xi summit expected next month. U.S. Representative Jamieson Greer said Tuesday the economic and trade relationship with China is stable. Greer said President Trump will aim to keep it that way in a meeting with Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping. He added the U.S. is able to access Chinese rare earth and maintain substantial tariffs on Chinese goods. Minister-level consultations on rare earths between the two sides began last month. They are part of preparations for the summit in May. U.S. authorities last Thursday sentenced a Chinese national to 30 months in prison. He was convicted of using stolen identities to apply for loans to buy luxury cars for resale. The Chinese national is identified as Chen Huachun. In 2022, Chen and co-conspirators used stolen identities to secure auto loans from banks and other lenders. After the loans were approved, they posed as the victims, using fake driver's licenses to buy or lease vehicles at a Connecticut dealership. The vehicles were then transported from Connecticut to New York for resale. Using this method, Jen once obtained over $90,000 in financing from a banking institution to buy a Porsche Panamera. He was arrested in New York 3 years ago while driving a Maserati purchased using a stolen identity. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Jen will face immigration proceedings once he completes his prison sentence. Another case involving illegal Chinese immigrants. Several days ago, the Department of Homeland Security announced charges against a Chinese couple illegally in the country. Their 2 children were accused of scheming to detonate homemade bombs at a military base in Florida. Brazil has added the largest Chinese electric vehicle maker to its dirty list, the South American country placing BYD on a government list of companies accused of subjecting workers to conditions similar to slavery. The move follows a 2024 investigation involving more than 160 workers at a factory construction site in northeast Brazil. Investigators say the conditions were degrading. Workers faced poor housing, had their wages withheld, and even had their passports taken away. BYD says it was not aware of any violations until local media brought the scandal to light. Meanwhile, the contractor involved in hiring the workers has denied the allegations. Brazilian officials say the automaker should be held responsible for the working conditions of its employees. Being placed on the so-called dirty list doesn't shut down operations, but it could make things harder financially. It poses a risk to BYD's reputation and could potentially block the company from getting loans from Brazilian banks. Brazil is one of BYD's largest and fastest growing overseas markets. After President Trump imposed high tariffs on China last year, Chinese electronics maker Agilent Technology saw its U.S. orders frozen for months. Many clients canceled purchases, while others demanded the company move production outside China. But things are not so easy. Take a look.
As Beijing retaliated, escalations pushed the levies above 100% on both sides. Back then, the company found a factory to partner with in Malaysia, was in the midst of setting up a facility in India, and even looked at moving production to the US. But it found foreign supply chains were incomplete, leaving it stuck with tariffed Chinese components and higher labor costs in the overseas factories. Then a Washington-Beijing deal removed most of the levies imposed, Now, Julian has decided to press ahead with setting up some facilities outside China as insurance against future turmoil. But it's found that overseas operations take way longer to do anything compared with China. And Chief Executive Fabienne Gasorg says the cost and quality of Chinese components also make having a base there more indispensable than ever.
We are changing the world from a free trade system somehow to a multi-tariff situation where having tariff is not only about 5%, 7% something, but more like 10, 50, 100 as it fits their business. So this is the trend we are going there. However, on our side, we see China as the trend that built China for electronic products is just incredible. A typical example is the capability to develop electronic components, which was very weak before, but now they start to have very strong electronic industries, microelectronics, so to developing chips, which is a very future-proof.
Now, Trump is set to visit China in May, against a backdrop of new uncertainties sparked by the Iran war. Gasorg isn't optimistic that the visit will produce a breakthrough.
I don't think that Trump will come here, but he will come here will change much. But he will try to push more his strategies anyways, that for sure, and try to bring more instabilities as obviously used to do.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.